Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Remco van Rossum, working for Wagenborg Shipping, Dutch shipping company. Working for Wagenborg for 14 years, several positions, and my current position is commercial manager. The email I sent you was more a theoretical approach, and then I thought I should bring the theory back in the day-to-day operations, so as we think HR should be organized. We as Wagenborg believe in the HR 4.0 scenario, where most of the HR solutions are highly automated on board and ashore, and where Wagenborg is investing in recruiting and retaining the best talent for now, but also for the future. This leads, according to us, to customized offerings and a thriving relationship with our seafarers, the office staff, the management of the company, as well our clients. HR 4.0 can be shortened and defined as a high level of automation and where the company acts as a personal career partner. Spurred by economical growth and capital, shipping companies heavily investing in new technologies. The automation of complex tasks in this world has materialized faster as expected. While many jobs also on board of ships have been replaced by machines, engines, and computers, the remaining jobs became more challenging, but at the same time, to supply of qualified seafarers exceeds the demand for it. At the HR department of shipping companies, new technologies are commonly applied, built to build close, long-lasting relationship with employees. In the day-to-day operations, the seafarers have more touch points with the HR department than ever. Services ranging from compensation and benefits to training, development are customized to perfectly match the seafarers with the duties and responsibilities on board. Seafarers are generally loyal to the ship owner or manning agent and identify themselves with the company they work for. All in all, ship owners have become the one trusted partner for personal career development. The future of human resources will have tremendous impact not only for the workforce, but also on the social and business sphere. HR 4.0 may call for the development of a diverse and individualized set of career options and more flexible working models and contractual arrangements within the shipping companies and their seafarers. In the end, it's that the implication depends to a large extent on how seafarers perceive and experience their environment on board. To better understand seafarers' behavior and emotions, we have to collect this evidence from board. My final note on this one, the different performance levels revealed that a high level of automation in processes is associated with a higher performance. But to my opinion, the effect of a good relationship between seafarers and the ship owners is already a high value on its own. Thank you.
Thank you. You can't remember that by heart, can you? But I think what you actually start the entire discussion is when you look at your HR structure in the future and you want to foolproof it, you actually need to think about the entire scope and how wide it actually is. And we're talking about a controlled disruption. And Mike, to follow up a controlled disruption, how do you view a controlled disruption?
Yeah, sure. Hi, good afternoon. I think that's working. My name is Mike Powell. I've spent 38 years in shipping. I've been at sea, I've been a lawyer. And over the last decade, because of the financial crisis, I've been involved in restructuring a number of companies, sometimes for growth, sometimes for contraction. I have I guess, a passion for efficient operations, safe operations. I don't believe that good companies kill people. I sometimes think that we treat safety separately, but actually it's just part of good business, and really we should maybe talk about it in a slightly different way. But when I was invited on the panel, which I'm very grateful for, by the way, I had a bit of a problem with the idea of controlled disruption as a start point, because if it's controlled, how can it be disruptive? It's just something that's happening, so change. And I also had, I was interested with this morning, we were introduced to some buzzwords by Kongsberg, a great presentation, I thought. And I'm going to give you a couple of new buzzwords to think about. One is reimagination, which this industry does not do enough of. We need to reimagine what's going on. The idea, and it came across in some of the presentations and some of the comments this morning, that things are not going to change, that things are going to stay pretty much the same, is one that you've got to get. It's happening all around us. Every single part of this technology era will allow us to fine-tune every aspect and every process in shipping, including the recruitment, the training, and we need to reimagine what that's going to look like. So, again, Kongsberg, autonomy, 2020, it begins in Norway. It will begin elsewhere. It may not be widespread. It may have limited applications, but it's going to happen. And our regulatory, our operating environment, and our HR environment has to anticipate and be prepared for that. One of the other words I'll introduce you to is disintermediation. I think it's a real word, but it actually means the cutting out of the middlemen in all of these processes. So perhaps Martin, who's a friend and colleague, he may end up redundant simply because he gets disintermediated. Brokers, disintermediated. People that all of those people that basically can occasionally clog up our processes. So I think we can't turn around and say, I don't see things changing much, which we did here in the room this morning, when everything around us is changing at such an accelerated rate. I have a client who is congratulating themselves on what they were doing with a 4-stroke diesel engine. And I said, why are we talking about internal combustion? That's already done. Because in 2050, with the carbon limits, things will have to change. And so we really do need to think about what life is going to look like in the future and prepare for it. So that's it for me. Control disruption, I don't think you can have it. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's not going to be universally beneficial to everyone. But hopefully shipping will come out of it as a better place and a safer place. Thanks.
Thank you, Mike. And then again, I would remind you that you have the possibility with the app CrewConnect. And then Mark, definitely, you are disruptive certain parts, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose I work
You're a
for
disruptive guy.
I suppose we are,
company.
yeah. I mean, I actually hate the word disruptive. Disruptive for me is just doing things in a different way and doing things more efficiently. And I think we've always done that, but things are just moving on. I think disruptive is quite a volatile and strong word, but things are just happening quicker. And that's why the disruptive word is being used now. And, Brightwell, I'm not going to advertise, I work for Brightwell. We're a digital wallet, and we make payments more efficient for seafarers and for owners, and we simplify things dramatically. But what I spend my time doing is going around visiting ship owners and ship managers and explaining what we do. And it's quite interesting about looking at what different ship owners and ship managers are doing. Everybody is looking for efficiencies at the moment. It's unbelievable. I mean, I'm very sort of privileged to be able to speak to many different owners and managers, and they're all looking for new crewing software, new solutions, and everyone's doing quite different things, which is quite interesting from our point of view. And we fortunately, our platform can tap into all these different platforms, so we're okay. But from a sort of a higher level, what that sort of tells me is that you've got to make sure that when ship owners and ship managers are looking who they partner with, are they just partnering for 2 years, 3 years? Is the company you're looking to partner with now where they're going to be in 4, 5, 6, 7 years' time? Are they able to actually keep abreast of the technology change and that sexy word disruption? I think that's key. So whether you're using a new CRM system, whether you're using a new payments platform, whether you're using virtual technology to de-stress the crew members when they join the ships. I think the important thing is, are the companies you're partnering with, are they in it for the long term? And are they open or are they closed? And what I mean by that is, are they open to collaborate with other companies? So you've got big giant companies that have the money to invest and to think longer term, but sometimes they're not necessarily as adaptable as smaller companies. And I think smaller companies can often be more adaptable and open to collaborate with other companies. And just an example, what I find fascinating about this forum is that, yes, there's potential clients here, but there's also collaborators and people we can, we talk and we think about where we can be in the future. So, our payments platform makes lives better for crew and better for seafarers, but we're constantly talking to the crew about how we can make our payment platform better. We run 4 focus groups every single year, and we talk to the crew and how we can make their lives easier. And every year we're discovering new things and new opportunities, how we can potentially collaborate with other companies. So I think the thing about disruption for me is more about making sure that you as ship owners and ship managers, you make sure that the companies you're partnering are in it for the long term and they're open, and that you're not sort of locking yourself into something for what you think is a short-term gain for long-term pain. And I think that's an important factor.
And I think people normally say innovation happens from the inside and then disruption happens from the outside. And definitely when we are looking into the maritime industry, we do have different facets. You said brokers out of it. And if you look at the commercial side, the crewing side and the ship management side, wouldn't it be fair to say that some areas already are open for actually a change? I'm thinking the commercial side. I mean, the traditional way of doing pricing, if you look on container companies, I mean, there are some models out there, people actually sitting at home, creating their own models in getting the inputs, again, going to the customers and saying, I think you can get a better price. And then by doing that, you're already disrupting a logistical chain that has been there for a very long time. So would it be easier to start with the commercial, the way you see it?
I absolutely agree. And one of the reasons why it's likely to happen there first is simply that the regulatory environment is different. If you think about IMO and SOLAS and STCW, there'll be there's some brakes on development because there's a regulatory inertia, which is very frustrating, by the way. But it's there. On the commercial side, there's a lot more latitude to develop products, greater analytics that we can source from the data from the ships. I mean, the days when a ship owner, for example, would try and hide the position of his ship or where it was next going to be open, and because that was information that was of value, those are pretty much gone because we've got almost complete transparency of where everything is at every time, and we can also got a pretty good guess of what it's doing. If you look at the likes of, and I don't work for these people, but the likes of Genscape or Cargo Metrics, and these are people that run algorithms over that information. So we have almost complete transparency there. And so on the commercial side, things will change, whether it be, Alibaba's been talked about, Uber for freight, an Amazon or whoever. And if we don't come up with something radical ourselves, and you've got Maersk and IBM trying to collaborate with something in the container side, then it will come from outside. Somebody's just going to come in with something really smart and just sweep all that stuff out of the way. So I hope it comes from internally. I'm a shipping guy, I've been in my entire life. But I don't, sometimes I wonder.
Just on the commercial point of view, I mean, I started my career as a shipbroker in the early 90s, and I actually left because I thought it would last, but I was proven wrong. And I noticed the questionnaire brokers are still around, and I think shipbrokers have evolved, and I think traditional sectors evolve and they offer a service, and there's many different commercial entities that can put algorithms and where there's the cargo, there's the ship, but they've got bigger. You can argue shipbrokers have got bigger. So I think companies just evolve, and again, looking at Brightwell, I mean, we've evolved from a sort of we started off with a prepaid card, but now we've got a digital wallet, and the prepaid card supports a digital wallet. So we've evolved. Every company evolves, and I think coming back to your main point about the disruption in HR, I think one of the biggest aspects is going to be the training side, and I think the welfare of the crew and the adoption of virtual technology. So I was at one conference with the Seafarers Society, and they were talking about the the difficulties and the stress involved of new masters going on board the vessel. And I thought that was just fascinating about the virtual technology of a master being able to virtually go around the vessel before he arrives, and that would de-stress his onboarding process. And I think, you know, I'm excited about those incremental changes which are here and now. I mean, you know, these disruptive technologies like Brightwell and like this virtual technology are here and now, and it's just a matter of adopting it. And one thing I find interesting about the shipping sector, there are certain ship owners and ship managers that are leaders, and there's certain ship owners and ship managers that are fast followers, and there's certain ship owners and ship managers that are followers. And a lot of the companies here are the innovators and the leaders, and you know, it's up to most of the company in the room to actually innovate and lead the rest of the industry.
Remco, you have a very clear question. It was directed straight to you.
Yeah.
You feel comfortable in taking it?
No choice, I guess. Of course, I would say no. It's hard to say in what kind of condition situation. Sometimes incidents or accidents happens by big failures of the captain himself or whosoever on board. Then still, of course, you should support any given time till everything is settled completely. But for the HR for the future, of course, you should always be there to assist the captain, but anyone on board. Nevertheless, the position on board, from cadet to captain, everybody is should be equal on board, or is equal on board.
I'll take the next one if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, interesting. I think one of the things you have to resist in any of these discussions about technology and the application of technology is the idea that there's kind of binary solutions. It's switched on or it's switched off. So what I'm saying in terms of disintermediation, not that brokers don't have a place, it'll just be a different place. The failure in the 90s was largely because you couldn't create a trading platform back in the 90s that could operate. That is not true today. We have global trading platforms on a number of different commodities in different areas. To say that that doesn't apply to shipping is simply wrong. It can apply to shipping. And actually the people that should be investing most in the development of those platforms are the brokers themselves. Thanks.
Any questions from the audience? I mean, we have a discussion in Norway right now. You know, when my parents bought an apartment in Oslo when we moved back to Norway in '73, it was only my mother and father buying the apartment from the seller. Then the real estate agents came and they took over the market. And today we see in Norway that we're back into the situation where basically it is a buyer-seller deal, where everything is automated online, all your papers, everything you need, and real estate agents are actually becoming less and less. So disruptive. I mean, we had a cooperation with DNV GL last year. We're looking at the project on making a Klaveness operations center, and everything we do is actually with the intention of working smarter. And we have given this idea some thought. One chief engineer sitting ashore controlling 4 vessels. Now, why shouldn't that be possible? Well, today it isn't possible because you have a regulatory requirement demanding you to have a chief engineer on board. But if you have the pure operators knowing how to operate the equipment on board, why should you not be able to take the chief engineer ashore? Our chief engineer today, he is the admin guy in the engine department. He does purchasing, it's PMS, it's planning, and that can be done ashore. But present that to someone in the industry and they go completely in the black, because it's just not how it's done. Well, I think it will be the way to do it in the future. And I think the first ones moving on that one and getting class and flag in on it, they will be the winners. I'm wholly convinced it will come. So what we are doing is not taking people out the business, because I think there will always be an opportunity to work in Brightwell when you've been a broker or do anything else. But we have to stop being so narrow-minded in how we approach this. And if you're not narrow-minded, maybe that's when you can control at least a certain part of the disruption.
I mean, I think you make a great point, and I think Kuba will endorse this, that over over a number of years now, increasingly the ships have actually become devolved administration centres for what are lean shore-based offices. But actually what happens then is somebody ashore who should be doing that particular function, it could be purchasing, whatever, just says, I'll ask the ship about that. And they'll ask it 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, whether the captains or the chief engineer is asleep or not, because they all deserve an answer in real time, because we've given them email, which is a real blessing. So I think that's, you're absolutely right. It needs to change. It can't go on as it is. So whether the ships are operated from at sea or ashore, that operations function cannot be a devolved administration function for the people that are supposed to be doing that.
Just to add to that, I think that connectivity will hopefully empower the captains more than they have now. And just looking at technology that we use, the way that empowers the captain. So we've been talking to Shell, and Shell don't have any cash on board the vessel. So why are you interested in our product? Well, we don't want the captain to get involved in the management allotments anymore. We want the crew to actually manage their own allotments back home rather than the captain. The captain should actually be doing things which are navigational duties and things which are more important for him rather than doing administrative duties. So I think technology will adapt and hopefully, almost have the masters be what they used to be and sort of more in control of their vessels rather than reporting back administrative to the office. I think, and it makes it more of an exciting career for the master as well. So I hope that's the way personally it goes, and I can see it happening as well. Any comments on that?
This discussion reminds me of a theory back when I was in school in the early 80s. The crews were going down from crews of 30 and 40 down to what they are now. And the theory behind it, of course, was that when the ship came in, it would be like a pit stop. You'd be swarmed by help from ashore to come and do all the chipping and painting and engine work and all that. And, I guess because of financial issues that never materialized. Now we just have overworked, fatigued seafarers. I kind of sense that the discussion may almost be going in that direction with regards to all these, connectivity and relying on the computers to do everything. And it's just an observation. Rarely do we ever hear about, the cutting of crew down and the resulting non-support that never came behind it. And I think we should be aware of that moving forward with our reliance on different computer systems, and everything will be automated, and everything's going to be autonomous. We have operators who are operating on a thin line of profitability. Yeah. I don't think adding to that cost is going to.
I actually think it'd be the reverse. I think technology would take away a lot of those what I would call non-essential tasks from the crew and let the crew focus on actually the real. The more important matters. I think it'd be the reverse. I think it'd be empowerment of the crew. That's the way I hope it's going to go. Yeah.
I think. So I take your point. Not without wishing to give my age away. In 1981, I was involved in a project that was called Project 81. They had a very original name, and its catchphrase was "Who needs more than 24?" And so I've been a victim of the environment that you're talking about, but I do think things are different, and the role. The thing that's changing everything actually is the connectivity that we now potentially have with ships. I think as of today, something like 30% of the ships in the world are connected to broadband. We reckon that'll be 80% within about 5 years. I think those are the numbers that I've heard quoted. That connectivity and what it allows us to do with data, sometimes remote management as well, but the whole idea of, and I was talking to somebody over lunch and saying, I've been the head of operations for a 200-ship fleet, so you've got a bunch of people in 5 different locations operating this fleet 24 hours a day. And one of the most frustrating conversations that I ever heard is somebody picking up the phone and then saying, "Captain, did you get my email?" That is just appallingly bad process. It's just dreadful. And if you imagine that over 9,000 voyages a year, how many phone calls that is. So you've got a bunch of people who are looking very busy, but it's not really good productivity. It's not efficient. So I think what will allow us to happen, that data transmission, we're still functioning on, a lot of ships still function on noon reports. They're at least 300 years old. I mean, really. We talked about aviation earlier. I'm sort of irritated with aviation. They did give us a 4,000-year head start, but we're still following aviation. How did we manage that? And it's because of a failure to change, a failure to adapt, and a failure to recognize that things are changing and are different. So I think I get what you say, because I've kind of been there and done that and got the T-shirt, but I think it's going to be different. Potentially it's going to be different if we get it right. And it's us that needs to get it right, because as Cooper said earlier, he wants to work for people that know shipping. I endorse what Martin said about transferable skills. We're rubbish at transferable skills. We don't recognize that anybody anywhere else in the world has anything to say to us that's worth listening to. Sorry, that's a huge exaggeration, but it's pretty right.
Did we have... There was another one in the back, and then we'll take you, if that's okay.
That's a good question.
I'm Helen Sampson from the Seafarers International Research Centre in Cardiff. I wonder if you would agree with me that technology can be used for good or for bad. I mean, technology allows us to do things, but it doesn't mean that we end up doing the right things. For example, just to focus on the bad for a second, we recently did a piece of research where we found that captains actually do not find that the technological innovations allowing them good communication with the office empowers them, but rather the opposite. So we've had captains talking about, even before you abandon ship now you have to get permission from the office. I couldn't believe that comment. It was said seriously. And many examples of captains feeling that they did not have the power and decision-making authority on board to deviate course because of weather conditions without prior permission from the office, which often took quite a lot of time to come and meant that they were ending up sailing in unsafe conditions. So I wonder if you'd agree, technology can be good or bad. It depends what we do with it.
I completely agree. To take that scenario, you could say that technology could be a good thing, but the structure and the way they're managing that technology is what's incorrect. So that's using technology in the wrong way, in my opinion, and it's over communication. Like we're all overly communicating sometimes, and because of technology, and it's just making sure that you give the autonomy to the master to do what he needs to do. But I take your point. There's an interesting study as well. It was in talking about the crew with regards to the negative impact of social media on board the vessels. I think it was done in the Bergen, and they were talking about the way that the crew it was disrupting their sleeping patterns because of the time difference. They felt that they had to communicate with their families back home, and therefore they weren't actually getting a decent night's sleep, and therefore they weren't able to do their job properly the next day, which I thought was really interesting. Everyone's talking about we need more connectivity, more social media. So this particular ship owner had actually limited the amount of time on board that the crew members could access social media, not because they were looking to reduce costs, but for the crew members' own benefit, that he could have a decent night's sleep. So you're right, it's how we use that technology, but it's important that due consideration is given to the structures which govern how technology is used on board.
I like to add to that.
Yes.
Within Wagenborg, we hear a lot of complaints from captains and chief engineers that with the current technology, Big Brother is watching you. They can, from the office, they see the fuel consumption, the consumption, they see where you sail to, how you do it. So a lot of guys, especially from the elder age, close to pension, they said, when I was young, I was a seafarer to sail to the horizon and to lose everything behind me for that moment. Nowadays, everybody can see what I'm doing. So But for the administrational part, what I heard, it's convenient because in the past everything should be done by hand. Now it's via the system. But with all the communication and everything what is available on board, then they said that the office is able to contact us 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and they expect directly an answer. They forget that we have to do business here on board as well.
Yeah. So back in the days, the captain entered into his own contract wherever he was. He doesn't do that today. We'll take you, and then we'll take the anonymous, and then Ollie.
Yeah, Martin Köpke, Hapag-Lloyd. I'm from the Big Brother department, actually. So we watching 230 ships, what they're doing. And we use mostly noon reports. So as you say, a noon report, they send it because the sun is at its highest point today. And this leads me maybe a little bit back to the last conversation or the last presentation. Do we always need seafarers ashore in every position? So what I hear a lot from our captains is they say, never change a running system. And it's absolutely valid going from A to B, I don't know, wind to North Pacific. Probably they shouldn't change their main engine because they may get in trouble. But if those people go to shore, head of a department, do that for 5 years, never change a running system, and there we are now. We have noon reports because the sun is at its highest point, at its highest point. So I guess we need a bit more change in that and a bit more, open-minded. And so I fully agree with you, Mike, as there is, in some positions, it's really important that we ashore understand what's going on, that there is someone who knows what happens out there, but maybe not everywhere ashore. It was more a comment.
What are the key qualities you believe we should be looking for in our teams in the future? Remco, would you like to go on that?
In my opinion, the ability and flexibility to be able to rapidly change, be able to change in a changing environment. I think the time is getting faster and faster, and you should be used and be able to catch up with all the new technology what is coming into our world. So you should be flexible to catch up with all the changes, I guess. That's according to me.
Actually, I was going to say something really quite similar. I think, obviously, tech savvy, multitasking, collaborative environments, and multicultural, because that's the way those teams need to be constructed. So the flexibility is there. And I'd just like quickly to respond to Helen's point. Clearly, the thing about technology is it's always 100% consistent. If you get it wrong, it's 100% wrong all the time, and if you get it right, it's 100% right all the time. So the voyage environment and the master's discretion, which is embodied in SOLAS. We had a Maersk Line, for example, 600 ships, a global network. There is no way that one captain on his ship knows what the impact of his actions are on that entire network. That needs to be done somewhere else. So that's just one of those things. So the master needs to be informed by the needs of the network, consistent with his safety obligations, of course. But yeah, so anyway, sorry, that was two answers in one.
Just very short, and just touching on what Martin said before, I think just hiring on attitude and aptitude, and don't be constrained by geographic locations. I think that technology will be able to lead to you being able to focus more on hiring aptitude and attitude from a crew management point of view. So the crew managers, hiring the crew managers, doesn't really matter where the crew managers are based. I don't think it does. There's a company we've been working with, and I won't mention the name, that are sort of creating a new model, and they're just hiring excellent crew managers, and they happen to be based wherever they're based, and they're using that technology to bridge that gap. So I think, attitude and aptitude, and don't be constrained by where the person's physically based.
And no doubt, I think a big responsibility on the shore side is actually being able to identify and complement the proper teams on board. Because I know I couldn't work with myself. Mike, you probably couldn't work with yourself, I would assume.
A lot of people say that.
So my point is, when we are creating these teams, living together on board for 3 months or 4 months, or in some cases even 6 months, on the shore side, you need to know that my responsibility is also making sure that the asset of the owner is taken well care of. And that means I have to put together a team that I know will maybe have the tech savvy, maybe we'll have the old captain who loves to teach others, having the chief engineer who once upon a time did something different, but on his own became a tech savvy. So, no, Ollie.
Yes, first to Remco, what he said about over-communication, business on board, I can certainly subscribe to that. And then to the lady from the Seafarers Research Centre in Cardiff, she's talking about companies that want to regulate when the master tries to correct an unsafe condition of a ship. And do those shore-based staff really understand the shipping industry, recoupers? And then, to the very end, I would seriously query the competences of a master who calls the shore office in order to correct an unsafe condition on a ship. That should be left to the discretion of the master always. Thank you.
Yes, Bob. He doesn't need a microphone.
That's right, thank you. Bob Fay with the Marshall Islands Registry. And I think Ali was the first one to say the word competency. That's why I find it a little interesting. What are the qualities to look for in the future? I think some of the qualities, just as a comment, are the same qualities we've always needed. Competency, experience, and the authority of the master. And it's funny that we're replacing a lot of that with technology and training. There are a lot of cases I've queried masters, and almost to a man, I said, are your company regulations sufficiently robust that if the crew is not getting enough rest hours or over their work hour limits, you can anchor the ship and rest the crew, correct? Oh yes, but only once. And it's, you know, there's a rule in every company management manual, that gives the master that authority. But the question to be asked is, does the master really have that authority? He has the competence, he has the experience to know when his crew needs rest, but do we really give him the authority?
Yeah. Well, for us, we stopped the vessel once to comply with rest hours. We had cement carriers trading the Norwegian coast, and that's a very hectic trade. We had cement carriers in Denmark, 350 port calls during 365 days. Of course, and when we stopped, yes, the commercial people were screaming, but we decided to do it there and then. I think no one is questioning competence being one of, but what I like about the discussion is we are seeing a bit outside the box, and I think that is important, constantly not getting back to where we were, but at the same time having the ability to think a bit different. And I think this is an excellent forum where thinking a bit different could be worthwhile. So we had another one. How do you see constraints when talking about connectivity, i.e. cybersecurity, data consistency, analysis accuracy?
It is actually, yeah. And have we got the rest of the afternoon to talk about this one? It's a great question, and it's right. And I mean, cybersecurity is one of those big buzzwords, and clearly it's a precondition for the connected world that we see developing, where ships become systems within systems, and that's kind of exciting. And there is also that business, if you put rubbish into a system, you'll get rubbish out. So data cleansing and analysis is going to be critical. Some of it's pretty straightforward and it's not as complicated as it looks. Other bits are very complicated when you get into predictive maintenance and analytics. That's a very tricky area. And I think one of the things about the connectivity, that one of the issues with connectivity on ships is identifying the critical systems. They may not be all made by the same manufacturer. Can you hook those up so that you have that system view and get the data back from the ship that you can analyze and crunch? And this does take workload from the people on board who are currently doing all of that. And I think what Mark said about allowing the people, whoever the operating staff and wherever they are, that they are allowed to operate and are not not diverted onto functions that don't add value to the operation. So this is the big, it's the $64 million question. Connectivity is a precondition. You have to have access to the internet. Or some other, that we're now looking at reinstating HF radio and putting data over radio waves, as we did in the telex over radio. I'm looking at you like you remember this time when we did telex over radio.
We're in a project on that right now, actually.
Sorry about that. You're probably a far younger man than I'm. But that kind of stuff, so that you're going to need redundancy in communications protocols if we're going to go autonomous or even close to autonomous. So you'll need, it won't just be satellite, it'll be something else. You'll need redundancy in systems on board and the support systems that to make it all work. So it's a huge, that is the technical challenge in a really neat sentence, but it will be solved, as all technical challenges can be solved.
The reason I was nodding is that we are part of a pilot project for the time being where we actually are having HF antennas on board some of our vessels.
Oh, you don't
and then,
remember using it?
No, because you do have blind spots and everyone knows about that. But the concept around the HF antennas, just to point on that one, I don't remember the firm delivering it. It's having that system on many vessels, ensuring that there is a connectivity between all those vessels with that HF antenna by this company selling that service. And then you have shore installations acting as link stations. So basically the concept is through these HF antennas to create a link system going through the shoreside and then to your head office or wherever you would like it to have. So that was the reason why I was nodding. So we have ended up thinking outside the box. I thought I would just mention one thing that we recently did. We had an annual survey by DNV on one of our container vessels, and it is something we are working on. I mentioned the Klaveness Operations Center, Working Smarter. And we did a remote inspection when we had the renewal of the certificates on that container vessel. Remote by... We bought a head camera, placed it on board, an iPad, and so forth. Now, the DNV inspector was on board when we did this, but we did it as a trial. Will it be possible in the future? And yes. So just like the rest of us are looking for improved business models in the future, don't underestimate the fact that the classification societies are actually doing exactly the same. They are looking for new business opportunities, and this is one of them, one of many. So with that said, thank you very much for the panel. Excellent contribution.